You're watching Signature Morning on Signature TV. It's Monday, the 17th of February, 2025. So today we're going to be talking about security operatives and the enforcement of law in Nigeria. And there's a whole lot that has happened recently, really. Let me just give you a little bit of an overview. In December, a few weeks back, we heard how an operative tried to gain entrance into a house, and because the person who owns the house had a license gun, he had to use it. I mean, the person didn't know that there was somebody coming into the house. There was no warrant of arrest, so the EFCC operative gained an entrance without the knowledge of the occupants of the house, and he got shot and killed. And recently also, we've seen the Inspector General of Police stating clearly that operatives must move around, who are going out for official duty must be sure to always put on their uniform, that you cannot be using mufti to move around and using guns, because that has always been abused. You see operatives who are not on their uniforms using mufti to move around, and then somewhat being even on official duty. You cannot be having guns and wearing mufti to carry out duties. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, especially if you're not even DSS. So today we're going to be looking at that overview and also speak to some other issues as it relates to the enforcement of the law by security agents. We have live in the studio with us Barrister Chukwunonso Ogbe. He's a legal practitioner here in Enugu State. Good to have you. Good morning.
Good morning. It's my pleasure being here this morning.
Barrister, I mean, it's a broad topic, but sometimes you have to narrow it to specific, issues that are within us. With what you have seen, can you give us an overview of the enforcement of laws by security agents? Do you think that we're on the right track to achieving that 100%, or maybe we're not even there at least?
Anyway, the enforcement of laws by security agents in Nigeria is an extension of the fundamental duties of the members of the executive arm of government in Nigeria across board. Because as most of us know, we have various arms and tiers of government. And when the members of the judiciary interpret laws, and when the legislature, being our lawmakers, when they make laws, it is the executive that enforces the laws made by the legislature and interpreted by the judiciary. And in doing that, in enforcing these laws that have been given a judicial sanction or legislative approval, the members of the executive arm of government make use of law enforcement agents in enforcing these laws. Having said that, we should appreciate the fact that if you just oppose the history of Nigeria as a nation with the history of our law enforcement agents, especially the police, because the police is that particular security outfit that is supposed to have a closer relationship with the civilian populace, you will discover that these security agents weren't actually put in place for the purpose of protecting the interest of the Nigerian people, so to speak. Rather, they were established for the purpose of protecting the interest of the members of the executive arm of government. In the days of yore, when colonialism held sway, the security agents weren't put in place for the purpose of protecting the Nigerian people. Rather, they were there to protect the interest of the erstwhile colonialists. And that particular culture was handed over to us when colonialism came to an end. That is the reality. And having said that, we should also appreciate the fact that the willingness of law enforcement agents to carry into force the provisions of the law or to render their conventional duty of protecting lives and property is to a great extent dependent on the disposition of the members of the executive arm of government. And that is why we witness cases of selective implementation of laws, selective protection of lives and property. That is why in Nigeria today, you come across law enforcement agents offering adequate security to VIPs. But the commoners, if I use that expression, the average Nigerian is not afforded that particular privilege, if I should not use the expression privilege, of being protected adequately. And that is why even when the judiciary interprets laws already put in place by the legislature, you find the members of the executive arm of government being selective in the laws they will implement. in which case, whenever there's any judgment handed down by our courts, and that judgment seems to be in favor of the executive arm of government, they'll be quick in carrying into force that judgment. But whenever there's any judgment that is at variance with the interest of the executive members of the executive arm of government, you find them exhibiting unwillingness in implementing such a judgment. So this is the reality on ground, and this development, unfortunate development, goes to lend credence to the fact that we are having challenges in our nation that has to do with weak institutions. Because in an ideal situation, you don't need to monitor the body language of Mr. President or the governor of a state before the police, as an institution, for instance, will be made to perform its basic constitutional and statutory duties. But here in Nigeria, because we have strong personalities and weak institutions, you have to take a look at the body language of the head of the executive of government before deciding whether you are to carry out your conventional duty. So by and large, without committing the fallacy of hasty generalization, I may bold to say that our law enforcement agents, they have not lived up to expectation. And it is not surprising, because you have to look at the foundation upon which they are thriving.
Interesting. But then again, how do you think that our law enforcement agents balance the enforcement of law and human rights? Because most of the time, when they try to enforce these laws, they are caught in the wind of accusations by the general public of fundamental human rights issues.
Two things are involved. It said that ignorance of the law is not an excuse. In other words, when law enforcement agents are carrying to force their basic duties, whenever they are found wanting, they are to be held responsible in accordance with the law. Having said that, we should appreciate the fact that, respectfully, that most of our law enforcement agents are not even conversant with the provisions of the law, especially provisions of fundamental rights, which Nigerian citizens are entitled to. Just the same way an average security agent will tell you, or will tell a suspect, a crime suspect, that ignorance of the law is not an excuse, as I noted earlier. But ironically, you discover that most of them, with due respect, they are not conversant with the intricacies of the law. So in the first instance, for us to achieve this feat in ensuring that the law enforcement agents carry out their duties while not derogating the fundamental rights of Nigerian citizens, we have to put in place a culture whereby law enforcement agents will be well tutored on the ambit of fundamental rights vis-a-vis their duties. Because, you know, the basic functions of these law enforcement agents, I must admit, are quite controversial. Because most often you find them acting on the spur of the moment. You know, you find yourself in a situation whereby you are being attacked by an angry mob, or whereby you are expected to quell an insurrection, or to, you know, to make use of arms. In which case you are expected to make good use of your sound judgment within a very short time frame, which is a task that even some lawyers may find difficult to achieve. That's the first ambit of this issue. Secondly, even in a situation whereby law enforcement agents may be conversant with the provisions of the law, because I am not ignorant of the fact that there are some law enforcement agents who are even lawyers, even when they are not ignorant of the provisions of the law as far as fundamental right adjudication is concerned, or fundamental right protection is concerned. You still find some of them being unwilling to respect the fundamental rights of the Nigerian people because of vested interest. So, in a nutshell, there are two issues. One, ignorance of these rights. You know, I am also not oblivious of the fact that conventionally, most of these law enforcement agents, they are being schooled on the various provisions of the law. But you know, the Nigerian factor, when they are being tutored before being made to become members of the various security outfits, some of them just acquire this training for mere formality, for the sake of acquiring same, not that they had any intention of using same in order to ensure that they carry out their duties in a professional manner. And I make bold to say, you know, I don't have any empirical facts to back it up, that many persons who even identify with our security agencies, who become security agents, they don't do that for the love of the job. No, they normally join these outfits because of out of frustration, out of unemployment. They see it as an available opportunity for them to at least to have something doing in order to be taking care of the basic necessities of life. That being the case, most of them don't care much about fundamental rights. They are more interested in being members of the various security outfits, and once that is done, whatever happens in the course of their duties, immaterial. Most importantly, we have a system whereby law enforcement agents are hardly held accountable for their misdeeds. And this particular line of action has gone a long way in emboldening other members of the force or other members of our various security outfits who may be tempted to embark on the violation of the fundamental rights of the Nigerian people while carrying out their duties. Interestingly, there's even a law in Nigeria called the Sheriffs and Civil Process Act. That particular law provides that before you go after any agency of the state, when I mean the state, either federal or state government, that you must see the leave or the consent of the Attorney General of the Federation or of the state, as the case may be, before you go after an erring public office holder, even when that person must have been found wanting by a court of law. And this particular setback is part of what has emboldened some of our law enforcement agents and institutions in seeing to it that they continue perpetrating the violation of the fundamental rights of the Nigerian people, knowing full well that even when you approach a court of law to seek redress, that there is a great possibility of having such favorable judgments gotten from a court of law being enforced. So these are some of institutionalized challenges that Nigerians are made to contend with as far as the realization of their fundamental rights are concerned vis-a-vis the activities of law enforcement agents in protecting the lives and property of the Nigerian people.
Every now and then we hear how EFCC broke into people's houses just to effect arrest. And that recently has backfired with one of them being killed, about what happened in Anambra State. Is there a modus operandi as to how people should be arrested, that is not forceful like the way EFCC does it?
Anyway, if you take a look at the provisions of Administration of Criminal Justice Act of Nigeria, interestingly, and also juxtaposing with another law being the Miscellaneous Offences Act, I may both to say that not only the EFCC, both EFCC and even the police, the EFCC enjoys similar powers with the Nigerian police, going by the instant law establishing EFCC. They have the right to invade any premises.
Evade?
Yes.
Or invade any premises?
The way they did. The only exception is that they have to inform you that they are around. Once you are not willing to cooperate, these laws I mentioned give them the powers to break into your premises for the purpose of effecting an arrest. I repeat, the only condition precedent is that they have to notify even without warrant of arrest.
Even without warrant of arrest? They can break into your compound.
Yes.
But they have to inform you.
They have to inform you. And if you are not willing to, to respond positively, these laws I mentioned gave them the powers to break into the premises. But beyond these laws, the first time I read this issue somewhere, some persons were surprised, but that's the law. I'm
also shocked.
Yes, if you take a look at the provisions of Miscellaneous Offences Act and then the provisions of EFCC Establishment Act of 2004 as amended, they are well stated there. Now, having said that, beyond the provisions of the law, I think common sense demands that because of the security challenges in the country, that the EFCC, just like any other law enforcement agent, should embrace some proactive measures in effecting an arrest. And before I proceed, may I be able to say that in case of a situation whereby they effected an arrest without bench warrant, in a situation whereby they are expected to avail the suspect of the bench warrant authorizing them to effect the arrest or to effect the search of the premises, the law also mandates them to make that particular warrant available to the suspect thereafter, after the suspect must have been arrested or after the premises must have been searched. But as I said earlier, and I'm very, very sure what I'm saying, that they have the right to invade any premises, to barge into any premises. And that was what happened to Senator Richard Okorocha. There was a time they wanted to effect his arrest. And most likely, probably they notified him of their presence, and maybe he refused to cooperate with them. And that's why he now saw what they did. If not, if what they did was to be illegal, I believe by now the senator should have taken out action against them in court. That is the law. So if you're not comfortable with that, the relevant provisions of the law authorizing them to do that, especially the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, it is there. Well stated, it is there. So that law should be amended. So
that's the reason why they always break into people's houses, because again, we also see people who would not be around and they still break into that particular house. You mentioned that the person who you are coming to arrest must be told.
Exactly.
So if the person is not told, is it wrong?
To the best of my knowledge, it is wrong, because that law is clear to the effect that when they want to effect an arrest or to search a particular premises for the purpose of carrying into force for the purpose of performing their duties, that they have to inform the occupant of the premises of their presence. And the person is unwilling to let them in, they now have the right. So that's the condition precedent. In other words, if they just invade the premises and break into same without the occupant being around, I think that would be wrong, except if they should toe that line of action with the express permission of a court of law, because whatever enjoys judicial approval in the eyes of the law is deemed to be valid. So having said that, I think it is wrong for EFCC or any other law enforcement agent to visit any premises just like that without any judicial approval and break into same when the occupant is not around. Exactly. Now, having said that, there are some institutions as well beyond that law, because there's a way we interpret some of these issues. For instance, if the EFCC wants to, or the police wants to effect the arrest of an employee of an institution, especially when there is no case of, the concerned employee being evasive, I think custody demands that you should reach out to the head of that establishment that you need the attention of so and so person, especially when the offense for which the person is being suspected to have committed has to do with the person's employment in that particular outfit. If that offense is, or the alleged offense is to a great extent connected with the person's duties by virtue of his or her being a member of that particular outfit, then you have to reach out to the head of the establishment, even though it's not expressly provided in the law. But we are talking about courtesy. It is when the head of the establishment is no longer willing, it's not forthcoming. That is when you can then, activate the other provisions of the law that we empowered them to, to break into such premises to effect the arrest. I made this statement because I know some weeks back or months back here in this state, there was a case of a journalist here in this state who, during a live radio program, was embarrassed by some EFCC officials who bites into the, radio station and even disrupted the
live broadcast.
Live broadcast. So in that situation, there ordinarily prima facie wasn't an opportunity for the person arrested to escape from that particular vicinity. So that on the face of it will be deemed to amount to abuse of powers. But by and large, if we are not comfortable with this law that I mentioned, in fact, this law specifically is contained in the Administration of Criminal Justice Act. And that linked it to the EFCC, because if you look at the EFCC Establishment Act of 2004, it provides that the EFCC officials shall be on the same pedestal with police officers. And then this Administration of Criminal Justice Act expressly empowered police officers to do what I have to do what I just explained. And interestingly, the law also empowered them to effect arrest anywhere. The only exception in Nigeria, as I speak today, where you cannot effect arrest, is in a courtroom when the court is sitting. In other words, going by the provisions of this law, the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, the police can even effect the arrest of a suspect in a court premises. Unlike what used to be the case in the time past, wherein police officers are expected to move out of the court premises and wait for the suspect. But this time around,
within the court premises,
you can. And if I should accord the literal interpretation to the provisions of that law, it also means that even law enforcement agents can move into the National Assembly and effect the arrest of maybe a lawmaker, despite the fact that we have what we call legislative privileges. On the face of it, you cannot ordinarily, there are certain things you cannot do in the hallowed chambers of the National Assembly. But that law on the face of it said that it's only in a court of law, when the court is sitting, that a law enforcement agent is not allowed to effect the arrest of a citizen.
Wow.
So some of these laws are being made without putting into consideration the nitty-gritties and the implications and consequences that are bound to emanate from sin. I told you what I'm 100% sure of.
Wow. But then, the case that happened in Anambra State, do you think that the EFCC had informed the occupant of that particular building before they tried to evade that particular building that led to the death of one of them?
I wouldn't know, because I am not an official of the EFCC, but if I should apply common sense to what happened, in fact, I wouldn't know who is the particular party that is stating the truth of what actually happened there in Anambra State, that particular faithful day. And may I also commiserate with the EFCC family, because the loss of any individual diminishes mankind. But having said that, according to the EFCC, according to their own story, which I'm not accepting that story wholeheartedly, that the suspect saw them from afar through his CCTV. Now, if of a truth the suspect saw them, you have to take a look at the facts and circumstances of a given case. Assume this matter should come before a court of law, and I have to be a judge. There are some factors I will consider to know if of a truth the suspect knew that these persons were on a legal duty and and that these persons who came into his premises are law enforcement agents. For instance, if it is established that he saw them from his CCTV, good and fine. That means he saw them when they moved in. Secondly, if when they moved in, he saw EFCC vehicles, not even one, not even a vehicle, but vehicles, to a great extent, it raises a presumption that these are EFCC officials. I say vehicles because those who are out to perpetrate mischief, maybe to embark on the act of offense of kidnap, can decide to come with a single vehicle bearing the EFCC brand. But if there are many vehicles, up to 3 or 4 vehicles, to a great extent, it may raise a presumption that these are EFCC officials. Secondly, if they also came into the premises with some members of the neighborhood, that community, let's say members of the neighborhood watch, if they were in their company at that particular point in time when they moved into that premises, to a great extent, you are expected to apply the test of a common man that, yes, that these are EFCC officials, and they came with members of the neighborhood watch and association group of my community. And if they also came in with, let's say, 1 or 2 members of that neighborhood or occupants of the premises, the other occupants, in that case, the test of reasonability may protect the suspect, in the sense that we've had situations whereby armed robbers come into the premises, they will, they will hijack one of the occupants of the premises and then order that particular individual to reach out to other occupants, for the other occupants to make available, to create access for the robbers to, to have access to the other occupants of that particular environment. But if there are numerous individuals who had already been arrested and who are in the custody, who are in the company of those EFCC officials, and the suspect saw them, then there is a presumption that these people are on legitimate duty. But by and large, I think that EFCC, even if they are on the legal duty, they also erred because considering the security situation of the country, I appreciate the fact that they may have done that if that was the only opportunity they had in apprehending the suspect, if the suspect has been at large, or if that was the only opportunity they had, to lay their hands on some sensitive materials, they may aid them in the execution of their duties. Because just like what I said earlier about the issue of arrest warrants, if you only wait for the time, if you only wait to effect the arrest of a suspect when such arrest warrant must have been issued in the course of doing your work as an agent of EFCC, official of EFCC, you should appreciate the fact that by the nature of their work, there are some vital pieces of information that they may have to lay their hands on based on impromptu attack input. Impromptu attack. Now, having said that, I feel that EFCC, instead of invading that premises at night, should have cordoned off that area. If the suspect has been at large for a very long time, if the suspect has been evasive, they will have just the same way FBI operates in the United States. They just cordoned off that area, in which case there will not be room for ingress and egress until daybreak. They can arrive there very early in the morning, as early as 4 a.m. or 5 a.m., then cordon off the entire area. So that whatever, they can even go there with very powerful long-range cameras that they will now beam on that building and the surrounding premises, so that if, in the event any person moves out of that premises, that camera will be able to detect the person. There are equipments that I believe ordinarily in modern day world that they should have in their custody and carrying out their duties, so as to minimize chances of what happens to one of the officials and even those that are injured happening to them, because the times are bad. So, by and large, it is when that matter comes before a court of law. I wouldn't know if they have approached the court of law over that issue, that the facts of the case, the facts of what transpired will now be presented before a court of law. And then the issue will now be appraised from a dispassionate perspective to know if of a truth, the test of reasonability will, avail the suspect in this scenario.
Right. I mean, you reasonably said that the person caught the people on camera, and this was at night. Remember, this was the middle of the night. It wasn't like it was a daytime to say, okay, he could tell this person is wearing an EFCC, vest or something. He was even on mufti. So, if you see something at night on camera, sometimes it can be different. Like, except it's the colored camera. It also depends on the kind of camera, and maybe the person was even alone. There was no vehicle according to the story. So you wonder whether the EFCC actually even carried, their own rules. They applied their own rules in the arrests. Because again, why would somebody know that there's EFCC on their door and then try to shoot them? It doesn't make sense.
Anyway, one thing you should understand is that EFCC, in the course of embarking on that operation, those officials did not flout their rules. I'm also not ignorant of the fact that the head of that particular establishment, in the month of October of the year 2024, if I'm right, made a publication, stipulating how EFCC officials are to go about their duties. Good and fine. But that publication cannot override the express provision of the law. But beyond the publication or beyond the provisions of the law, common sense demands that there are some steps you have to take in the course of performing your duties in order to protect yourself. Even as a lawyer, if I secure a favorable judgment from a court of law, despite the fact that I have that judgment in my custody, there are some safety measures I have to put in place in the course of enforcing that judgment. Otherwise, anything can happen to me. And if anything happens to me, even though I'm on the right path, then the rest may be history. So you have to, maybe those who are lawyers, you understand what I'm talking about. If you want to enforce a judgment of a court of law, there are some proactive steps you have to take, or proactive steps the court officials have to take in order to protect themselves. In fact, there are some places, if you want to leave your execution in some places, you don't just go with a truckload of policemen. In fact, there are some places, if you want to leave your execution, there may be need for even for soldiers to be involved, depending on the caliber of execution you want to levy. So that's where wisdom calls. So on the face of it, what they did is legal. But taking a look at the reality of the moment, I think they should be, due respect, be more circumspect. They shouldn't have gone there at night. Or if at all, if the suspect is a vital suspect, they should have waited till daybreak. They should have barricaded all the roads leading to that place, and then by morning they'll be able to. And then the issue of whether the suspect was able to notice the attire at night is a question of fact. That's why I said earlier, the entire facts will be placed before the court at the end of the day if the matter finds its way to a court of law, in which case we will now be made to understand whether the environment was well lit at night when that thing happened. Because for them to allege that he saw them through the CCTV camera, maybe it presupposes that the compound was well lit. So, but by and large, no matter the powers given to you by law, it's just like maybe I heard that it was the Gracie of Africa who said that it's only a man who is mentally unstable that will fight an armed man with bare hands. So even when you know you're right, wisdom calls. For instance, even as a lawyer, there are some places I go to when I have a reason to have encounter with maybe law enforcement agents. I keep quiet. It doesn't mean I'm a coward. I'm not saying I'm a coward or that I'm a brave, but I will keep quiet. That will not stop me from doing whatever we do. That will not stop me from coming after you. To the highest, I will still do whatever I want to do. But I will take my time, analyze the situation, know when to respond. Even in the court of law, it's not always, as a lawyer, you're expected to be confrontational if you know the tricks of the job. At times, you have to be as calm as a lamb. Some other time, the lion in you wake up in order to achieve what you are looking for. So by and large, beyond the letters of the law, EFCC officials, just like all the law enforcement agents, are expected to apply common sense in the course of carrying out their duties. It's just like the current directive that that law enforcement agents should always be in their uniforms.
Yes. Good
and fine, because they don't know who is who. At times we do have this challenge of knowing those who are real law enforcement agents and criminal elements,
True.
who are bearing arms, because illegal arms are in the hands of many criminal elements in Nigeria. So at least, even for security purposes, you don't want to have disclosed your name. There may be, because of the nature of their work, there may be, at least you be in their attire. Like there's one or two officers who should be well dressed, to make people understand that these are law enforcement agents, that these are not criminal elements.
Okay, so speaking about this enforcement, it's always very interesting to hear these things so that people don't take it for granted. Many persons have also blamed law enforcement agents for the way and manner they go about arresting people. That if it's a big man, they invite them to their offices. Or if it's somebody that they can always intimidate, they intimidate them and then they probably destroy their homes before that arrest is made. Do you think that you've seen that kind of disparity in the way and manner that law enforcement agencies carry out their duties when you are not a person of interest or a big man in the society, you tend to be treated in a totally different way. When you're not a big man in society, there's certain other ways that you are treated, which is not something that is obtainable elsewhere.
In this regard, law enforcement agents are not the only ones that are culpable. It's a Nigerian thing. It has become part of the Nigerian culture. Even here in Enugu, these people, MOT people, it has become the norm that they don't normally go after people who are in cars, vehicles, government plate numbers, whenever they flat traffic rules. It has happened severally. In fact, it's common knowledge here in Enugu. But the ordinary people, they are usually weak in apprehending them. So it's an unfortunate one. Even here at times, you find some law enforcement agents, when they violate traffic rules, their fellow law enforcement agents cannot go after them. Imagine MOT people here going after soldiers who violate traffic rules. It's an unfortunate, because in a country where if you believe that you are civilized people, then we should be governed in accordance with the law. Because if all of us should start beating traffic because we are strong men, they are anarchy, even though soldiers will not go anywhere. If all of us should park our cars on the streets, you will not even have anywhere to go. How many cars will you destroy? What am I trying to say? If we want to make progress as a people, then there should be respect for law and order. But in this regard, honestly, I will not hold law enforcement agents liable. I will not hold them liable solely without admitting the fact that it's a Nigerian problem. So if we want to address it, it should be holistic, not only law enforcement agents. Interestingly, again, even rich men or big men can also become victims of unrestrained abuse of power when there is vested interest. Because Senator Richard Okorocha is a big man, but you saw how EFCC handled him, probably because a bigger man had interest in his matter. Because in life we have hierarchy. Those you answer sir, they are those they also answer sir. You see an honorable commissioner, you answer the honorable commissioner sir. The same honorable commissioner answers the governor sir. So except when there is vested interest, but by and large, it's a Nigerian problem. It's a Nigerian problem.
And do you think corruption in security spheres affects the way and manner that they affect their enforcement?
Definitely. Corruption is a cankerworm that has bedeviled the entire facets of the Nigerian nation. And as I noted earlier with regard to the issue of being a selective implementation of laws, the same problem that obtains in our law enforcement institutions also obtains across board in Nigeria. So corruption, to a great extent, has been a clog on the wheel of progress as far as the implementation of laws is concerned in Nigeria. Because you find a situation whereby a law enforcement agent may exhibit unwillingness in going after a criminal suspect because he has not been mobilized. In an ideal situation, you are not expected to pay any dime before a law enforcement agent will act on a report, criminal report. But here in Nigeria, if I tell you the amount of money that you have to cough out in Enugu State as I speak, before you have law enforcement agents, go after a criminal suspect, or before you have them investigate your matter, it is what that if you are not well to do financially, that you not get justice. In fact, during the last law week of Nigerian Bar Association Enugu branch, I was a guest speaker. This issue was addressed, and then it generated controversy. Some persons were unhappy with the way I handled this particular topic, but we cannot continue pretending that all is well. In as much as I will not also want to indict the Nigerian police and then exonerate other facets of the Nigerian society. There is trouble everywhere in Nigeria, even in my own place of work, being the judiciary. So I'm not trying to make a blanket indictment, but I cannot feel ignorance of the fact that before you get law enforcement agents perform their duties of late, you have to mobilize them, if I use that expression. So, and that mobilization has to do with corruption, because when you talk about mobilization, the type of money being demanded is not within the reach of some persons in the society, which is not what is supposed to be the case in an ideal situation. In an ideal situation, if there's the suspicion of commission of crime, you walk into any police station, for instance, lodge your complaint, and it ends there. But when you probe further, you discover that even the funds mapped out for the performance of the duties of these law enforcement agents, these funds may be ending up in private coffers, in which case, to a great extent, you may also not blame some law enforcement agents. Do you want them to use their money? How much are they being paid? And from the bigger amount they are being paid as their salaries and emoluments, you now expect them to fuel their vehicle to go effect arrest and all whatnot. So these are institutional challenges facing the Nigerian law enforcement facet of our existence and facing the Nigerian nation at large.
Okay, for you, as someone who has taken it upon himself to talk about this law enforcement agencies and their enforcement of laws and rules vis-a-vis the rule of law and, of course, human rights, how do you think that people can hold the law enforcement agents to the jugular, especially as it concerns the breach of human rights?
Unfortunately, to a great extent, to achieve this feat that we envisage, being the feat of protection of human rights in the course of law enforcement agents performing their duties, the government of the day, at various tiers of government in Nigeria, has a vital role to play. What's that vital role? We have to address the malaise of poverty. Poverty, yes. No matter what I tell you here this morning, if you don't address the problem of poverty in Nigeria, gross poverty in Nigeria, then the realization of human rights will be a mere dream, and law enforcement agents will continue trampling on the right. Then let me explain the correlation. When people are well-to-do, I don't mean being stupendously rich, when people can take care of their basic necessities, and then law enforcement agents violate their rights in the course of performing their duties, that is when they will be empowered to seek redress in a court of law. That's when they can be able to engage the services of a lawyer. That is when they can be able to, to push through the tortuous challenges associated with prosecution of cases in course of law. But when people are not well-to-do, when people are poor, to a great extent, there's a correlation between poverty and ignorance, because people who are poor find it difficult acquiring education. No, these are realities. People who are poor find it difficult acquiring education. Then the educated ones, when they are poor, when you trample on their rights, they cannot go to court. They cannot afford the fees to seek redress. I am telling you the reality on ground. And as lawyers, we talk about pro bono. When we say pro bono, it means lawyers rendering free legal services. Most of us no longer do pro bono these days. How will you do pro bono when you are still fighting to take care of your own needs? So in an ideal situation, what I'm telling you even goes beyond the issue of fundamental rights. For the Nigerian people to be in a better position to hold the government accountable, to checkmate the excesses of the government of the day, then the issue of poverty has to be addressed. It's because of the issue of poverty that people are being manipulated. That's why people are willing to sell their votes for as low as 10,000 naira, because they are inherently poor. Many people are frustrated. There is despair in the land. So no matter the grammar is speaking about the realization of fundamental rights, if you have a situation whereby people are unable to approach a court of law to seek redress when such rights are violated, the law enforcement agents will continue doing what they are doing, knowing full well that many people will be willing to. Maybe this issue of reckless arrest, I've once been a victim of that. Even when I was a teenager, I was arbitrarily arrested by policemen here in this state, and the matter went to court. In fact, one word or the other, I'm still on that matter. Even,
really?
One word, the judgment was given in my favor. So, to a great extent, there's a way I now relied on that judgment in filing another suit here in this state that is still pending in court. Basically, the suit that I filed has to do with the duty imposed on magistrates in this state, to be visiting police cells to know the state of those who have been detained in police cells. It's a provision of the law contained in the current Police Act that is not being activated. There is a provision in the current Police Act which empowers magistrates and chief magistrates to be visiting police cells to know the state of those who are being detained here, and in appropriate cases to release those who are unlawfully detained. So I now relied on that judgment, stating that when I was a teenager, I was arrested for doing nothing. Of course, the matter went to court because I came from I hail from a modest background. I have those who are able to fight for me. As at that time, my uncles were already lawyers, or at least one of my uncles was already a lawyer then. I have a family that was able to afford legal fees, and the matter was taken to court. But unfortunately, there are some persons, possibly in their thousands, who never had that privilege, who never had that opportunity of going to court of law to seek redress. Not that they don't want to do it, but because they don't have the financial wherewithal. You have to eat before you start talking about going to court. You have to eat. How will you go to court when you are having challenges in paying house rent, paying your children's school fees, in feeding? You are talking about going to court. How will you go to court when you cannot afford the services of a lawyer? So the issue of poverty has to be addressed before we talk about the realization of human rights. So when people are, just like a rich man, a law enforcement agent cannot manhandle a rich man and just go scot-free, except if the rich man decides to leave him. Why? Because he's a rich man, he'll follow it. He will hire the best lawyer in the country and go after him. And then even if you're talking about logistics and what's it called, this other money, anything you want, any type of money, he bring it out and pay to get justice. He wouldn't even mind paying above whatever he must have lost to get justice, to pursue to his logical conclusion, because he's a rich man. So, in a nutshell, the malaise of poverty has to be addressed before law enforcement agents, some of the excesses can be curtailed vis-a-vis the realization of fundamental rights in Nigeria.
Wonderful. Barrister C.D. Ogbe giving us insights, fantastic insights into some of this interesting topic as it concerns the law enforcement agencies and the effects of their fundamental human rights for the public. We've also seen and heard people talk about the relationship between the law enforcement agents and the public. Sometimes security agencies don't see the need to have this back and forth in terms of the relationship, a friendly relationship, so that it is easy for the public to be able to talk to the security agents to know about the environment. Because again, if you don't get information as a security agent, you probably be working blindly. How important is it for security agencies to explore the connectivity that comes with the relationship between law enforcement agents and the public where they serve?
It's very, very fundamental. But before I talk about that, you have to look at the modus operandi of these security agents in Nigeria. They are not there to maintain any friendly relationship with the populace. That's not the essence of setting up law enforcement agencies and institutions in Nigeria.
No, but it should be.
Ideally, in an ideal situation, that's what it's supposed to be. In an ideal scenario, law enforcement agents are supposed to be your friends. They are supposed to be your friends. They are supposed to assist you once your actions are in tandem with the laws of the land. They are only expected to be the enemies of criminal elements or those who don't want to respect the laws of the land. But here in Nigeria, I find an amusing situation whereby even little kids, once they see some law enforcement agents, they'll take to their heels, even as children. They've already been indoctrinated with this belief that these people are dangerous people, capable of doing anything. And you don't have to blame those who harbor this resentment, because we've had numerous cases of extrajudicial killings. We've had numerous cases of those whose rights were violated for doing nothing. I speak from experience, because when I was arrested as a teenager, I was with my father. We are discussing. They just came and then picked me up that they embarked on random arrest of people. Thereafter, we are taken to police. They say it's Operation Fire for Fire. We are taken to police station here in Enugu for doing nothing.
Wow.
And this is the story of many people. So you don't expect that friendly relationship to be there. And that is why we are not even having this synergy between the populace and the law enforcement. There is this disconnect. Absolutely. Because you don't expect me to cooperate with you when, from your actions as an institution and your inactions, you don't care about me. But if there is in place an institutionalized atmosphere of friendliness, mutual understanding, then that's when people will now be willing to comfort you, say, look, you people are here for us, we're also here for you. That look at the challenges we are encountering in this environment, and look at so and so things we think you may do for us to be able to have a more secure environment. But it's not playing out. So, in a nutshell, we have to take a look at the foundation of law enforcement institutions in Nigeria to address this problem. Otherwise, we're just scratching the surface. It's a foundational problem. Handed over to us by our colonial masters. So it's asking that there should be an overhaul. Because now, even those who are talking about state police, for instance, take a look at the activities of most members of neighborhood watch and association groups here in the Enugu state. The way they disturb people, maybe you're coming back at night from your place of work, you find boys hailing you, asking for money, hailing you, senior man or junior man. So even if you should have state police, the same malaise will continue, because it's a culture that has been passed across. And as I keep saying, it's not only peculiar to Nigerian law enforcement agents and agencies across board. It obtains everywhere in Nigeria. So there should be a total overhaul of the Nigerian system. All is not working, because without also not trying to hold brief for these security agents and law enforcement agents. If you're talking about corruption, affecting their activities, how do you expect them to survive while relying solely on the meager salaries that are being paid? It's not possible. And believe you me, what most of them do, what you accuse them of doing, many of us are also culpable. The only difference is that they do theirs in public and they do theirs while applying some level of direct force and to a great extent taking away the lives of people and probably consequently go to many establishments. You find civil servants who will not be willing to perform their basic responsibilities unless their palms are greased, which is against the law. So as you are trying to accuse these law enforcement agents, most of us, if not all of us, are guilty. In fact, the working of the Nigerian system has made it difficult now for one to thrive as a Nigerian while being a person of integrity, because poverty and integrity, they don't work together. Poverty and integrity don't collaborate with each other. They are opposed apart. Don't brag of being a man of integrity when you are suffering acute poverty until you are faced with acute poverty. That is when your integrity will be tested. The same way Job, the biblical Job, was tested. Because amidst your integrity, you are contending with a challenge. Whether you're a civil servant, you are being paid 200,000 naira a month, and then your house rent. If you're a monthly tenant, your landlord is telling you to pay 40,000 naira as house rent. The cost of transportation, how much it will cost you to come to your place of work to and fro on a daily basis. You will discover that as an average Nigerian, as a Nigerian of modest means, if you're able to spend 500,000 naira in a month in present day Nigeria, if you're a man with a family of let's say 4 or 5 kids, and you're a civil servant, and you spend an average of only 500,000 naira in a month in the present day Nigeria, and you are working, that means I think you're a good economist. How many civil servants are being paid up to 500,000 naira? The answer is very clear. Then how do you now expect them to meet up? They automatically must be compared to indulging corrupt practices. These are some issues that the government of today is not looking at. So the Nigerian system will make you to be corrupt. The same way the biblical expression stipulates that it's difficult for a rich man to make heaven. I am sorry to say that in present day Nigeria, it is difficult to be a Nigerian and be a person of absolute integrity today in Nigeria. It is very, very, very difficult. I repeat, it is extremely difficult today to be a person of absolute integrity. You may be a person of manageable integrity, just to manage you, but the absolute one, because of the workings of the Nigerian system.
You mentioned that spending of 500,000 naira in a month, is a fair deal in today's Nigeria. Yes,
for someone who is
average or maybe low income or average income, 500,000 naira.
Yes, to spend 500,000 in a month.
And the minimum wage is under.
That's what I'm talking about.
80,000.
So they have to get the balance through other means. Because to fuel your car, if you are driving a small car, I don't know for others, you spend an average of, let me say, 40,000 naira per week to fuel your car. If you are driving a modest car, not these big ones, it's a modest car. Now, if you spend an average of 40,000 naira per week in a month, get a total of 160,000 naira for car. Then talk about utilities, energy. Now that you have created a band regime, like as I speak, they say that I'm part of band A. I don't know when I stay beating band. I'm not in band A. Band A, I spend an average of about 1,000 naira per day on electricity. On a serious note, just rough estimate, just I spend an average of 1,000 naira per day. So per month, you are spending about let's say 25,000 naira on electricity. Yeah, talk about feeding. There's this advice that people render these days that if you give your wife money to go to the market, just switch off your phone until she's back, so that she will not have a chance of calling you. If you are lucky, if you have a woman who knows how to manage money, if you at least 40,000 naira per week will be enough for 40. You manage 50,000 naira per week. So feeding 200,000 naira per month, cost of fueling the vehicle, then utility, then children's school fees, then house rent. So 500,000 naira will not be enough for an average Nigerian, and the person is then even cost of making calls. They've also increased that one. How will you now meet up? So that, and the law is that as a civil servant, you are not expected to do any other business concurrently. Why being a civil servant? The only exception is that you can go into farming. Now, if you are a farmer, herdsmen will not allow you to do your work because you cultivate your farm. Herdsmen will go and attack the farm. Even if for you to do that, how will you be able to coordinate your work as a civil servant concurrently with your job as a farmer? To a great extent, it will be difficult. It will be difficult. In other words, if you're a civil servant and you are doing another business apart from farming in order to make ends meet, you are going against the law. That is, theoretically, you are going against the law. That means you're not a person of absolute integrity. Admittedly, you may say that I'm not stealing, which is true, but you are flouting the provisions of the law. We say that a civil servant is going by the civil service rules. A civil servant is not expected, not allowed to carry out his trade concurrently with another business.
Right.
I'm able to prove to you now, as that it is difficult in present day to be a person of absolute integrity. Because how much are they being paid? These police officers, how much are they being paid per month? I'm not trying to be there, but at times, like when I address this issue during our MB interactive sessions, with due respect, some persons wanted to sound theoretical. I don't like sounding theoretical over some issues. I like being realistic. You face the reality of the moment. You pay a police officer 150,000 naira a month. He's always outside protecting others, moving around. Why won't he collect money from motorists? I'm not saying it's very, but where will he now meet up? He has his own family to feed. The same way you as a civil servant, you collect money. You now, even I heard that there's a particular establishment, even those they call this public people, that this establishment that people should be public complaint commission. They are tired of receiving complaints. In fact, that even if you want to complain about any case of extortion, they will keep mute because they are tired. How will you? You want to complain to them, but the reality on the ground is that these people are not trying to make ends meet by all means.
All right, Barrister, many thanks for your insights. I mean, it's been an amazing discussion. It's always been an amazing discussions with you anytime we speak on the national issues. Many thanks for your time.
It's
truly
my pleasure.
Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right, thank you so much for being part of the last hour discussing the enforcements of the laws by security agencies.
Save Nature TV. News in your pocket.